Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Parama Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarva Gurubhyo Namaha. So we're continuing on with our discussion of the book Mumuksupadi by Pila Lokacharya, with the commentary by Manavala Mahamunigal. And we're in the Dvaya Prakaranam. We've just finished discussing the first part of the Dvaya Mantra. Dvaya Mantra, as the name implies, is divided into two parts. The first part is Sriman Narayana Charano Sharanam Prapadye, and the second part is Srimate Narayanaya Namaha. So we've fully understood the meaning of the first part. So we want to go and look at the meaning of the second part, Srimate Narayanaya Namaha. So I think the very last point that came up in the first part was that in Sutra 159 was that repetition of the mantra is not going to, if one thinks that by repetition one will reach the goal of the mantra, that's not necessarily correct. It's not correct. And the example given was a Leela of Hanuman, where Hanuman went to Lanka and he was captured by the Rakshasas in Lanka. And he was tied up by a mantra weapon called a Brahmastra. And the Rakshasas, however, did not have faith that the mantra weapon, the Brahmastra, would hold him. And so they also put a rope around him as well. So because they had no faith in the Brahmastra, it didn't work. Brahmastra is such a weapon that you have to have faith in it that it works. And the same thing with property. Same thing with surrender, is that we have to have faith that it will work. And when Lord Rama in his Charama Sloka says, Sakrideva, Upannaya, if that once only one has to surrender to him, or to say, Tavasmi, I am yours. And then one is saved and one is given salvation because one surrenders once only. And this is not a thing which is sectarian between it shouldn't be sectarian between the northern school or the southern school of Sri Vaishnavas, but the Wadagalais and Tengalais, except that property or surrender is done once only. It's really done once only. The difference is that the northern school says that we have to, somehow or other, they say that, and at the same time they say if you commit some sin after property or after surrender, or then you have to do a type of surrender called prayaschitta property, or you have to do something to atone for that sin, like that. And what they're saying is you have to do another type of property or another property, and therefore their system is to leave the real property, which they call paranyasa, until quite late in life, usually. This is not necessarily, but usually they have a thing called paranyasam, where you transfer the burden of your sins from all of your previous, millions of, unlimited lives in this material world to the Lord, and give him the burden of those sins and the burden of being in charge of giving you liberation, of taking you to moksha. And they leave that till quite late, until they've realized that perhaps when they're older, that they don't have to, they realize that they won't sin anymore in certain ways. So whereas in the southern school, the Tengalai school, the property is done right away at the same time as Pancha Samskara, and it is included in the Pancha Samskara, which is done normally in early on in life. And if and for boys, especially in the early years, and traditionally perhaps for girls immediately after marriage, because normally there'll be a system where the girls want to take initiation from the husband's acharya, so which probably saves some differences between, but there's nothing wrong with having different acharyas, husband and wife, but still that's a traditional method. And anyhow, getting back to the point is that property is done once only, and that doctrine is actually accepted by all all schools of Sri Vaishnavas, but it's practiced in slightly different way. Okay, so getting back to the point, Sutra 159 of Mumuksupadi speaks about repeated chanting of the mantra. See, because if the first part of the Dvaya mantra indicates property or surrender, Sriman Narayana Charano Sharanam, Sharanam means surrender, Prapadye means surrender. So if the first part of the mantra means surrender, then that should be done only once. So somebody may ask, well, why do you chant again and again the Dvaya mantra? Why don't you just chant it one time when you do property and that's it, finished? Okay, so the answer is that when we chant it again, we're not actually doing property every time that we chant the Dvaya mantra, if we remember what was discussed previously. What we're doing is we're remembering that property. We're remembering that time when we surrendered to the Lord. And it's by that remembrance that the Southern School says that if there's any prayashchita to be done, if there's any atonement to be done for future mistakes or sins, then it's simply by the remembrance of the property that we did. We can surrender only one time. Everybody agrees on that. So therefore, we should remember that surrender. We just remember that we did that and have full faith that the Lord will save us because of that. So that's the point. So now we're going to go, let's start the understanding of the second part of the Dvaya mantra. So let's have a look at the text. So here we have, so 159, text 159 or Sutra 159 was the last part of the first sentence of Dvaya mantra. So he says here, thus he stated the meaning of the first sentence or the first half of the Dvaya mantra. After this, he begins to present the meaning of the last sentence or the second sentence of Dvaya mantra. So from 160 on, we have the second sentence. So Sutra 160 is the last sentence states the goal, prapya. So we know this, that the Lord is the means, the upaya, and he's also the goal. He's the goal. Service to him is the goal. Like that. The goal is to serve the lotus feet of the Lord of all, the owner of all, the husband of Sriman Narayana. He reveals the purpose, stating the goal, prapya, after choosing the means. Prapaka varana. Okay, so text 161. This says it is not for any other goal. It is not for any other goal. So, since the sadhana explained in the foregoing sentence is common, meaning the first part of the Dvaya mantra, is common to all the four goals, this states that the choosing of the means done previously is not for any other aim. That is the purpose of stating the goal here. Why is it necessary to relinquish other goals and aims for this one only? Okay, so first of all, before we go on to that, let's see what P.B. has to say about these two sutras, 160 and 161. So again, Sutra 160, the second part of the Dvaya mantra. In the second part of the Dvaya mantra, service, which is the fruit of the goal, is told. And his comment is, the meanings of the second part of the Dvaya mantra are now explained. Service to the divine feet of the Supreme Lord is the gathered meaning of the second part of the mantra. So this is the general meaning of the second part of the mantra. And Sutra 161, the recitation of this mantra is for gaining service and nothing else. So what is gathered from the fact that the means is described in the first part of the mantra, and in this second part, the goal is described. So what is gathered from that? The means described in the first part can give many things, right? The means can give us many things. Therefore, the goal described states that this means is not to gain anything but the service of the divine feet. I think we remember that the discussion of in the Tirumantrum Prakaranam of the Tirumantrum, the Monorayanaya, was that the chanting of the Tirumantra actually can give us all different types of fruits: dharma, karma, artha, all these different types of fruit, not just moksha, which is, and again, moksha is the service of the Supreme Lord in Sri Vaikuntha, right? But here it's saying basically that the goal here is only one, the only one goal, and that is service to the Supreme Lord in Sri Vaikuntha. So back to the main text. Okay, so why is it necessary to relinquish other goals? So what would the other goals be? Purusharthas or arthas are goals. So Purushartha means the goals of human beings or purushas, or personnel. We could say sentient beings, right? Purusharthas. So they are dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. But moksha is the ultimate goal, And we were discussing a little bit in Artha Panchika about people called Kaivalyartis, or people who want Kaivalya, Kaivalas, who want Kaivalya Mukti, Kaivalya or isolation, liberation and isolation. That is not really considered by Vaishnavas as a goal. It's the goal of normally of the Jnana Yogis. Very minor goal in terms of bliss and in terms of knowledge, compared to the actual moksha, active service to Sriman Narayana in Vaikuntha. So, so leaving that aside, let's not get into a discussion about Kaivalya Mukti, but we have these other goals because it is classed as a type of liberation, right? So let's just continue to think about the main form of liberation, which is the active service of the Lord in Vaikuntha. So we have these other goals: religiosity or duty, which is called dharma, economic development or making money or gaining wealth, which is called artha, kama, which means gratification of the senses, material gratification of the senses in different ways, and that is called kama. So why it's necessary to say that there's only one goal, and that is the service of the Lord in Vaikuntha, which is our idea of moksha, right? And not anything else, is the question. Why is it necessary to say that? Right. So Sutra 162, one relinquishes other upayas, other means. Remember, when we're performing property or sharanagati, we're relinquishing other means. The Lord himself is the only means. There is no other means. Bhakti yoga is not the means. Karma yoga is not the means. Jnana yoga is not the means. Okay, so other paths of self-effort are given up. That word relinquish is important. It comes in the Charma Sloka section. In the Charma Sloka, or Bhagavad Gita 1866, Lord Krishna says, Sarva Dharman Parityaja. Parityaja is the verb, and it means give up, abandon, relinquish. So here the word relinquish is being used here. One relinquishes other upayas. So these dharmas are upayas. They're other methods, right? So sarva dharman parityaja, give them up. Give those things up. Relinquish those. So one relinquishes other upayas and resorts only to the final upaya. The final upaya. In brackets here it says charamopaya. So the term charamopaya is sometimes used. The footnote here. Well, we'll talk about the footnote in a minute. Okay, so the final upaya, or the final way, in the same way one relinquishes kaivalya, right? Kaivalya is also a goal, right? And wealth, aishwarya, right? And other upayas, right? Which means other goals, and requests the ultimate goal, right? When we surrender, we're requesting the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is service to Sriman Narayana. So when one chooses the upaya, the means, right, in accord with his true nature or swarupa, what's his true nature? His true nature, our true nature of everything is that it was created by the Lord, it's sustained by the Lord, it's supported by the Lord. It's controlled by the Lord. Everything is in this situation. So also the sentient beings, the Chaitanas, they are sustained and controlled and supported by the Lord. We are his property. We are like his servants or his slaves. And therefore, that is our eternal nature. And that's the most important part of our nature, right? In Vedanta, sometimes it's said that the soul is a doer. And that's its true nature is that it's a doer. It is sentient being. It has sentience, right? It has consciousness, right? It has knowledge of itself, right? I think, therefore I am. And that is the most important description of the soul. Those are the most important attributes, that it's a doer, that it's sentient, that it's self-aware. These are most important understanding of the soul. But actually the most important understanding of the soul is none of these things, but it is that it is the servant or the slave or the property of the Supreme Lord, and meant only for his purposes. Meant only for his purposes. Right. So when one chooses the means, right, meaning the Lord, right, in accord with his nature, right, Swarupa, of having no other refuge but the Lord, right, which is understandable, right? One has no other refuge but the Lord, because the Lord is the master, and therefore no one else is the master, right? Ananya Sharanatva. Sharanatva means taking refuge, right? Remember, twa at the end of a word in Sanskrit means ness, like, so surrenderedness. It means, right? Ananya means, anya means any. Ananya means not any. There's no other place to repose your surrender but the Lord. That's what it's saying. Ananya Sharanatva. He relinquishes the other upayas, the other means. What are the other means? And we'll just state them so that we know what they are. Karma, which we mentioned, karma yoga, jnana yoga, right? And bhakti yoga, right? Right. When we say yoga, when I add yoga to these terms, the idea is yoga is a method of, the word yoga comes from the Sanskrit word yuj, which means the verb which means to join. So a method of joining again with the Supreme Lord, right? Being in his service, right? Being close to him and serving him, right? Or yoga is through works, through offering the results of our works, through offering, through study of the scriptures, through offering our intelligence, like that, or through devotional acts. So karma, jnana, and bhakti. These are methods. These are methods of effort. They require effort, self-effort, and resorts to the ultimate siddhopaya, the Lord. Right. In the same way, when one requests the upaya or goal, in accord with his true nature of having no other delight than the Lord, ananya bhogatva, right? So not only ananya sharanatva, right? But also ananya bhogatva, that we have no other delight but the Lord, or the service of the Lord, right? So we don't delight in duty. We don't delight in knowledge. We don't delight in bhakti. We don't delight in all these things. In the sense we don't delight in those things being a method to reach the Lord, right? He relinquishes wealth, Aishwarya, and solitary enjoyment of the Atma, Kaivalya. We should relinquish this. We should not. So here, Kaivalya is being mentioned as something which is actually should be given up by the mumukshu, the person who is interested in liberation, should give up this idea of solitary enjoyment of the soul, of Brahmanubhava, right? Or Brahmananda. The other aims and requests, should give up these other methods and these other aims, these other goals, right? And he should request the ultimate goal, The ultimate goal, which is the active service of the Supreme Lord and Sri Lanka. Okay, he brings up now he says he brings up the question raised by those who think that it is superfluous to make a request to the Lord who knows one's thoughts. Okay, so this is the next topic. Before we go to the next topic, I want to look at this word here again. Where is it mentioned? It was mentioned here. Okay, in the sutra, the word charama upaya is used. Now remember that word charama means final, right? Upaya means the means. So charama upaya has two meanings actually. So it can mean here it's being used in the sense of the Lord himself is the ultimate upaya. He's the ultimate means to the goal. Upaya means. Charama upaya means the ultimate means. Siddhapaya means the perfect means. Okay? So sometimes these words are used instead of just upaya, they say charamapaya or siddhapaya. So there's a reason for that. But in other texts, in other Sri Vaishnava texts, this term charamapaya is sometimes meant to mean acharya abhimana, which is the fifth method. When we were discussing in Artha Panchika, Piralokacharya's described how there are different sadhanas, there are different upayas, there are different means to the goal of liberation. There's karma yoga, there's jnana yoga, there's bhakti yoga. There's prapatti, which means surrender or sharanagati to the Supreme Lord and letting the Lord be the person who does it. And then there's also what we call acharya abhimana, or very, very deep faith and conviction in the guru, in the teacher, right? And that is considered by many people to be the charamapaya. The charamapaya. That is also a method for people who don't know exactly even how to surrender to the Lord, although it seems very easy, right? Faith and determination to surrender to the Guru is enough, like that. So I'm just going to read the footnote here in the book. She says, in Piralokacharya's Sri Vachana Bhushana, which we've discussed before, and in most later, after Mumuksupadi, later Tengalai texts, right, and by other Tengalai acharyas, right, Southern acharyas, the term charamapaya is used to mean acharya abhimana, the love of the acharya for the disciple, or the love of the disciple for the acharya, actually, right? A means, upaya, or right, to the ultimate attainment, which is, of course, still the service of the Supreme Lord in Bhakti, right? Which is distinct from property. Here, the context indicates charamapaya means property. Okay? So here, even though in the Mani Pravala, in the original text, in which you can't see here, even though Piralokacharya has used the term charamapaya, it should not be misunderstood to mean acharya abhimana in this context. Does that make sense? So this is just why the note is here. But however, if we read Sri Vachana Bhushana and we read some other text, even if we read Artha Panchika, he's going to mention that there's another method. And just as some people think that Sharanagati or property is a part of Bhakti Yoga, right? Atmanivedana, which is one of the 9 forms of Bhakti. Right, so some people will make that argument. They'll say property is a part of Bhakti Yoga. It's Sharanagati. It's Atmanivedana, one of the 9 forms of Bhakti. Right, Sravana, Kirtana, Padasevanam, etc. Atmanivedana is the last thing. So it's part of Bhakti. That's the argument of some people. The Sri Vaishnavas say no. There may be some Atmanivedana. There may be some surrender, in Bhakti Yoga. But property itself is a separate upaya, is a separate method of attaining the Lord, or the Lord's service. Here, the Tengalai Sri Vaishnavas especially have, but also the other Sri Vaishnavas too, the Vadagala Sri Vaishnavas, they speak about acharya abhimana as also being a separate method. It's not really a separate method. What we do normally, in the case of Marukari Alvar, we see that Marukari never prayed to the Lord. He's the only Alvar whose prayer and his prayer, he wrote one prayer called Kananun Sirutamba. And Kananun Sirutamba means it means a collection of small threads. It means a collection of small threads, which is what Mother Yasoda did to try to tie up baby Krishna when he was being naughty. She was trying to tie him up, and she had to keep adding rope. She had to keep adding threads to the rope to make it longer to try to tie him up, and she was never able to tie him up in that method until he allowed himself to be tied up. Okay, so this Kananun Sirutamba is a prayer by Marukari Alwar in praise of Namalwa. It's in praise of Namalwa, and it's not a prayer directly to God. So that shows what we call now Charamopaya or Acharya Abhimana, the resorting to the Guru alone to save us as the upaya. Now, once again, sometimes it gets a little bit confusing, and we say different things are the means, right? For instance, we say that resorting to the Acharya, going and doing Panchasamskara and doing Samashranam, this is the means to liberation. Property itself is the means to liberation. We say that we've discussed in Sri Vachanabhushana, we've discussed how by controlling the mind, we can control the senses. So we control the mind and the senses. God sends us an Acharya, a nice Acharya. The Acharya then performs a Panchasamskaras and gives us the Tirumantrum. The Tirumantrum is the preliminary form of property, the preliminary vehicle through which we do surrender to the Lord, and the Dvaya Mantram also at the same time, and Charmasloka in Sharanagati and property and Panchasamskara. So the Acharya is the Acharya and the Panchasamskara and the property and the Dvaya Mantram and the different mantras. These are the initial causes of property. These are the initial types, the initial means, the initial upayas. But they're not the primary upaya. The primary upaya is the Lord himself. And sometimes people get mixed up. So they think the mantra is the thing which is saving you. No, it's the Lord which is saving you. The Lord is saving you. Like that. He's the main thing. He's the actual upaya. Like that. We see these things as there's a method of going through these. Of course, you can do property without Panchasamskara, without the mantras, and etc. You can just surrender to the Lord, as Gajendra did, as Draupadi did, as Vibhishana did. Right? You can do that. But the traditional system nowadays is to go through the Panchasamskara and everything, and so therefore that is understood as the traditional customary way to do it these days. That is the initial upaya. That is the initial means, and then there's the primary means, the Lord. So just as the Lord is the primary means, similarly, this going to the Acharya may seem to be the primary means, but it's not really the primary means. It's really also something that we normally do. It's normally done in concert, in parallel with surrender to the Lord. So surrender to the Acharya and surrender to the Lord are done in parallel, like that. However, we have some examples. We have two examples that stand out, that are usually given, of people who place great faith in their Acharya, above and beyond their faith in the Lord or their service to the Lord or their prayers to the Lord. The first is what I said, Marukari Alwar. Right, Marukari Alwar in his Kananun Sirutamba, because he never prayed to the Lord directly, he only prayed to his Guru. And that is considered this type of Charamopaya or Acharya Abhimana. The second example is in the life of Ramanuja. There was a devotee who was made his cook. Now, normally a sannyasi doesn't cook himself, because in the scriptures in Bhagavad Gita it says, Sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragniya na chakriya. So niragniya means he touches no fire. And in fact, sannyasis, we can add yogis here too. These yogis or sannyasis are not supposed to cook for themselves. So they're not supposed to touch fire. Fire has to do with the mode of passion, and they're not supposed to touch it. Even they're not supposed to touch metal implements. because metal is created by melting, minerals and making metal. So it has this energy or this shakti of heat in it, like fire, and therefore they shouldn't touch it. They shouldn't touch it because it's been created by the mode of passion. So a sannyasi is supposed to strictly stay in the mode of goodness and keep away from any contact with the mode of passion or ignorance. So sannyasis don't touch metal. They wear wooden shoes. They have wooden implements like if they have a panchapatra, a spoon and a cup for doing ritual worship or anything, or any vessels used for ritual, it will all be made of. It all should be made of wood, and not metal. Okay, so having said that, right? So sannyasi to yogi chana niragnina chakriya. So Ramanuja used to go begging, which is called in northern India, they usually call this Marukari. Marukari means like a bee going from flower to flower, gets a little bit of pollen here and there. A beggar will go from house to house and offer some, spiritual guidance or something, so whatever it is. He'll just go and he'll just beg, and the residents of the house will give some alms to the beggar, right? So this is called Marukari in North India, like a bee. This goes around to flower and collects pollen. In South India, it's called Unchavritti. Unchavritti means the same thing. And sometimes this is done by even householders or by poor people. And also it's done by sannyasis or monks, mendicants. They go around to different people's houses and they receive a little bit in each place. Maybe not enough for a full meal in each place, but they receive a small amount. And sometimes it's given as uncooked. Sometimes it's given as cooked. If it's given as uncooked, then of course somebody has to cook it. Now the sannyasi has to have somebody to cook it for him. So in any case, in the life of Ramanuja, there were some envious people in the temple when he started to change the management of the temple and the way that the rituals were being performed. When he took over the responsibility for managing the Sri Rangam temple, which is another whole story which we won't get into here. At that time, there were some people who were in the management previously who didn't like that and who decided that they would poison him by having some lady give him some food when he was begging, which contained poison. So their plan failed, and the lady gave some hint to Ramanuja when she gave him these alms that it was poison, and therefore he didn't eat it. So when this came to light, the devotees thought, we have to stop that. Ramanuja can't go and beg alms anymore. So we have to have somebody to cook for him. So they got a person they got one devotee, and they said, okay, your service is now going to be to cook for Ramanuja, because he's a sannyasi, he can't cook for himself according to the scriptures. So this person one day was in the mutt where Ramanuja was staying with his disciples, with his unmarried disciples, his the mendicants, his sannyasis, and whoever was following him who were unmarried, and the Lord Namperamal, the processional deity of Lord Ranganatha, was going as usual in the streets outside the mutt on procession. So normally when a procession of the Lord comes in Sri Rangam, and this still happens even to today, the people who are in the streets, at least those two streets around the temple, they will come out. The ladies will wash the street and they'll do kolam, they'll do rangolis, they'll make special auspicious designs with rice flour on the road before the deity. First thing you'll see, if it's at night or early in the morning, you'll see the lamps, the people carrying the torches. And then the Lord will be there on some sort of palanquin or what they call a palaki, or it might be on some vahana, some sort of carrier, some sort of type of carrier like Garuda or Hanuman or a Yali or a Simha or a Hamsa, different vahana, Kalpaviksha vahana, different vahana. And he may be coming by himself, he may be coming with Ubayanatyas, his two consorts. And you'll hear a big procession. The temple elephant will come in front of the temple elephant, and or next to the temple elephant. There'll also be white horses. There'll be people. Then you'll see, the first thing you'll see is the Brahmins coming and chanting in Gosti, in congregation, chanting the Nalaya Divya Prabandham, the songs of the Alwars in Tamil. After that, you will have the Lord come, and then, but at the end of the procession, you have several groups of Brahmins chanting the Vedas. This is a very typical procession. So this procession was coming along, Namparama was coming along, and normally what people do is they come out when they see the procession, when they see the Vaishnavas and the Lord in this procession, they prostrate in the street, and they get up, and then they offer their worship when the Lord comes. And sometimes the Lord will stop outside someone's house, and those people will come and they'll present the Brahmins with some dakshina. They'll give some money, some bhavana, some fruits or something to the Brahmins, and also they may offer some lamp or something to the Lord or whatever it is, and then the procession continues on. So when your duty as a Vaishnava, especially if you're living in the Agraharam, the Brahmin community, the neighborhood, those two streets outside the temple, is that when these processions come around, you're supposed to come out of your house, give up what you're doing, and fall down in front of the Lord, offer your obeisances, see the Lord, and then follow along with the procession. That's your duty. So Ramanuja, when they heard the sounds of the trumpets and the different devotees chanting, they knew that the Lord was coming. So Ramanuja immediately told all his disciples, he ordered them immediately, our duty is to go outside and to worship the Lord Namparama, Lord Ranganatha coming in procession. So at that time, his cook was boiling milk. So we know that if you don't watch milk, if you're boiling milk, as soon as you turn away, it takes some time to boil. But as soon as you turn away, if you're not careful, right, it'll overboil the pot, right? If you don't watch it. So there's a saying in English of a watch pot never boils. So when you're watching it, it doesn't boil, but it's somehow or other, as soon as you turn away, it overboils like that. This happens to a lot of people. So the Ramanuja's cook said to Ramanuja, when he ordered all of the devotees to go outside, he said he wanted to stay and he wanted to continue to watch the boiling of the milk, which he was doing for his guru, Ramanuja, right? That was his duty. So he said to Ramanuja, you go and worship your Lord, I will remain and worship my Lord. Meaning, you are my Lord. I don't know God. I only know my spiritual master. That was his idea. I only know my guru, and you are Ramanuja. My duty is to you and you alone. My duty, I don't feel that my duty is even to God. My duty is only to you, and therefore I will stay and I will do my duty to you rather than doing the duty to the Lord. So some people may say, well, okay, isn't the duty to God greater than the duty to Guru? The Guru is normally understood to be, he's honored as much as the Supreme Lord. He's honored as much as the Supreme Lord. All throughout all forms of Hinduism, Vaishnavism, that's accepted. That the Acharya or the Guru or the teacher is honored as much as the Supreme Lord. And this is the idea of the Charamopaya or Acharya Abhimana, that through the Guru is the means, like that. Now, normally, as I said, these two means are practiced simultaneously. The property, surrender to the Lord, and the Lord being the primary means, and also the love for the spiritual master, or the love for the Acharya, right, and the service to the Acharya, which should be on a parallel track. It should be on a parallel track. The Acharya will probably tell his students, do this or do that or whatever it is like that, and he will always engage them in the service of the Lord anyway, like that. In that particular case, though, that is given as an example when an Acharya asked his student to do something, and the student actually refused to do it because there was a greater good to be done. According to the student, the greater good was to serve the Guru, and therefore he stayed and continued to cook the milk, to watch the milk. So we have also another example in the life of Ramanuja, where Ramanuja went to one of his gurus, Goshti Purna, to find out the meaning of the mantras, the Charma Sloka and the Gvaya mantra and the Astakshara mantra. And he was told that the Astakshara mantra should not be told to anybody else, that giving this mantra, the Om Namo Narayana Astakshara mantra, would lead to the liberation of the person that you give it to. Because it says in the scriptures, Om Namo Narayana iti mantropasakaha Vaikunta Bhuvana Lokam Gamishyati. That he will go, that person who worships the Om Namo Narayana mantra, he will go to, or he or she will go to Sri Vaikunta Bhuvana Lokam Gamishyati. So Ramanuja understood this, but he was also told by his guru Goshti Purna not to reveal this secret to everybody else, to anybody else. And the very first thing that he did was, out of his compassion, he disobeyed his guru, and he went and he, for the greater good of others, right, told everybody. And his guru asked, well, why did you do that? Well, he said, well, if I go to hell, it doesn't matter, right? If the punishment for revealing this secret is to go to hell, then I'm willing to take that punishment if everybody else can be liberated. So this is another example of selflessness. So we find all of these things are practiced in parallel: worship of the Lord, worship of the Guru, and selflessness for the benefit of all living beings. So okay, so 262. Let's have a look and see what Sri P.B. Anangacharya says about 262. 262. Okay, so we have again, the meaning of 262 is in the first part of the mantra, right? Sriman Narayana Charano Sharanam Papadye, the Siddhopaya, right? His being the means and the end, right? The perfect means, right? Which is above all other means, such as karma, jnana, and bhakti, was seeked. So we sought the Siddhopaya. We sought the Lord as a refuge, as our refuge, as our only refuge. Similarly, in this part of the mantra, the second part, the other goals such as wealth, knowledge of the self, etc., right? Knowledge of the self indicating that Kaivalya goal, right? That type of liberation in isolation, are rejected. So these things, wealth, sense gratification, duty, and even liberation in isolation, Kaivalya, are rejected. And the final goal, that is service, right? That is above all of these other goals, is the thing which is sought by the second part of the Vaya mantra. Why should other goals be rejected and this service be sought? This goal of service only be sought. Seeking the last means, the Siddhopayam, the perfect means, right? While giving up other means like karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, is appropriate for the Chaitanya, the living being, right? Whose nature is that of not having any other means, right? So the main attribute of one of the main attributes of the Chaitanyas, of the living beings, is that they have no other means but the Lord. They have no other means. We have no other owner. We have no other controller. We have no other supporter but the Lord. So therefore, we have no other means. Similarly, in praying for the goal, seeking the last goal, service to Him, while rejecting other ends such as wealth and knowledge of the self, is appropriate for the Chaitanya, whose nature is that of not having any other enjoyment. Right? What was that called again in Sanskrit? Not having any other enjoyment but the service of the Lord. Ananya bhogatvam. Ananya bhogatva. Ananya bhogatva means the soul has the quality of not finding actual enjoyment in anything else but the service of the Lord. because that is the swarupa, that is the nature of the soul. That is part of the nature of the soul. That is an essential element of the soul. Okay, so back to the main text, Sutra 163. Here, now we're discussing the question here. Manavalama Muni in the commentary always gives us a way to go to the next sutra by giving us a question which is answered by the next sutra, which helps us to understand the next sutra, because maybe we don't even know the questions to ask, right? So Manavala Muni provides us the questions to ask so that when we read the next sutra, we get the answer. So that is the duty of a commentator in Sanskrit, that he has to provide things which are not there in the sutra. Because remember, sutra is a very short aphorism, a very terse or very succinct sentence, which gives a lot of meaning. But we have to ask the right questions when we get an answer. So sometimes there'll be an answer. What we're doing is we're getting a lot of answers here. All these sutras are answers, but exactly what question they ask is not being stated. It should be understood, and that's what the sutra text is like. So Manavala Muni is providing that question for us. So he says here, right? He brings up a question. Here's a question raised. By those who think that it is superfluous to make a request to the Lord, who knows one's thoughts, right? So if the Lord knows our thoughts, then why would we request him? Why would we request him for salvation? Why would we seek him? And why would we say Tavasmiti? Why would we say I am yours? Why would we request to be liberated? Why would we say, please, Lord, save me? Right? Why would we do that? So he's starting the answer here. Does he have to request this of the Lord? That's another question. Doesn't the omniscient one know his thoughts? So he replies, Sutra 164. When he hears the Chaitanya's prayer, the Lord's heart rejoices. The Lord's heart rejoices. When a child who has not wanted to eat due to illness recovers from his disease, the mother is delighted when she hears his request for food. It is the same for one who has had the disease of desiring other aims. So all of these desires for other things, what are these desires for other? What are the other aims? What are the other goals? Dharma, duty, religiosity, artha, making money, gaining wealth, karma, personal sense gratification in this material world, or even kaivalya, or even isolated enjoyment by ourselves, right? In liberation, brahmana bhava, just simply rejoicing in the nature of the spiritual nature of the soul. These are all selfish aims. These are all selfish aims, right? So, so in the same way, for one who has had the disease of desiring other aims, so all these other aims are considered to be diseases. Because why? Because they're selfish aims. They're all selfish aims. Even that type of liberation, kaivalya, right? Or what the Buddhists call nirvana. Nirvana means extinguishing, right? As I said, it means for the person who is thirsty in the desert, it means simply quenching his thirst with water. No, not really any positive enjoyment of drinking nectar. That is a selfish aim. Right. So without it is the same for one who has had the disease of desiring other aims without any desire for this one, the service of the Lord, right? Since time immemorial. So there may be people who also want to serve the Lord, and they also want these other aims, as we discussed in the Tirumantrum Prakaranam, that the Tirumantrum will give sense gratification, knowledge, and duty, and give all these things, these other things, these other aims. These are the goals, right? And we know, we discussed in Acupuncture, we discussed how normally Kaivalya comes out of Jnana Yoga. So all of these goals are involved in karma, jnana, and bhakti yoga. Right. So if the desire for this goal arises in him, for this goal, meaning service to the Supreme Lord, arises in him, and he approaches the Lord, the Sheshi means, again, Shesha is servant, Sheshi means master. So the master, the Lord, the Sheshi's heart rejoices when he hears the Chaitanya, the soul's prayer, requesting that goal. So God actually becomes pleased when he hears that. Now, again, let's go to that analogy of the drowning man. There's a person in the water. The lifeguard is there. The lifeguard is not in the water, but he's near the water. And the lifeguard's duty is to save the person, any person that's in trouble, right, who's drowning. When the lifeguard hears that call for help, that cry for help, the lifeguard actually feels happy, in a sense. He feels, now I have, instead of just sitting here all day and being paid to do nothing, I have a chance to practice my skill and save this person. I've had this experience personally. I've sat by a pool or sat by, right? I've had this experience personally. And then one day some kid is found floating face down in the pool, and the mother comes and somebody yells and like that, and immediately you spring into action. You spring into action, but you only spring into action when you hear the cry of somebody. Right? Of course, maybe you might see something happen and you might do something, but normally you only spring into action when you're called. You're called to action. There's a call to action. Help me, save me. And so you go and you do your duty and you save the person like that. So it's the same thing with the Lord. The Lord wants to save us, and he enjoys so much when he hears us make our prayer for surrender to him, request him to save us, request his service, request to do what is natural for us again, realize our swarupa, realize our true nature, right? And indicate to him that we are realizing our true nature. So he actually rejoices in that. That's the only reason for requesting it. It brings delight, it brings pleasure to the Lord, that requesting of salvation to the Lord. Right? And that example of the child who is sick and doesn't want to eat, and then afterwards, the child, when he starts to recover, right, in the sense, when we're in this material world, we're completely in illusion. When we start to come out of that illusion, and by the grace of the Guru, we begin to understand the true nature of our being, that our actual swarupa, our actual nature, our actual attributes are to be owned, controlled, and supported by the Lord only, right? And for his purpose only, and for his enjoyment only, right? Then when we understand that, when we indicate that to the Lord, he becomes extremely happy with that. So that's the point. So after this, with the intention of giving a word-by-word meaning of this sentence, he takes up the first word, Srimati. So, okay, so up until now, just like with everything, with every different subject that we come up to, first of all, is given a general understanding of the term being described, and then what happens is a more detailed understanding of each word or syllable or letter of the mantra being described. So now we've basically, with 164, we've got to the end of the general understanding of the second part of the Vaya mantra, and we're going to now go into even more detail by looking at each and every word individually of the second part of the Vaya mantra. So let's have a look and see what P.B. Nangacharya says about 163 and 164. So text 163, again, according to Vibhya Namacharya, 163 and 164. It's grouped here together, right? So here are the translations of the sutras. Does the Chaitanya, or the living being, need to pray? Somebody might say that. Well, why do you need to pray? Because God knows everything. So therefore he knows when you're ready to surrender to him. So you don't need to actually pray. You don't need to actually do anything. He'll know that. Right. So will not the all-knowing Lord know what the Chaitanya needs and give that? Yeah, he will. He knows. He knows. But when you pray, what happens? Text 664, 164. That is true, right? That is true. What was stated in 163 is true. He knows. He knows. When the Chaitanya, the living being, opens up and asks for what he wants, I want salvation. I want your service. I want your eternal divine service, O Lord. Right? When he opens up like that, his divine heart, the Supreme Lord's divine heart, will be pleased. Therefore, the Chaitanya should pray. The living being should make that prayer. We make that prayer because it pleases the Lord. He rejoices. He is so happy when he hears the living being understands, is beginning to understand his true nature, his swarupa. So it is said by Alwar, and he gives a quote here, he knows the innermost thoughts of all Chaitanyas. He knows our innermost thoughts. Being that the case, does the living being need to pray to him? Isn't he all-knowing and therefore know the Chaitanya's wish? He knows what we want, right? When the living being who for countless time has been seeking other goals in so many different lifetimes, and not showing any interest in the highest of goals, develops a taste for it and asks for it, his divine heart will be pleased. This is the reason for making this prayer, right? This is similar to the great pleasure that develops in a mother's heart when the child who has been sick and unable to eat comes out of the sickness and becomes hungry and asks for food. We see this many times. We see this, that we see a story like this, that the person is sick and the person has some fever, right, and is unable to eat and is delirious. That's what we are in this material world. When we're covered over by illusion, by ignorance in this material world, and we don't know our true nature as a servant of God, we are delirious. We are so diseased by these other selfish aims. We are delirious. Means we don't know even what we're talking about, what we're saying. We're acting like madmen compared to our real nature. And when we start a little bit to come out of that fever of delirium, we start to come out of it just a little bit like that. The first thing that we do is we ask for, first when a person comes out of a coma, or a person comes out of a fever or something like that, when the fever breaks or the coma breaks or something like that, the first thing they ask for is, I want this, or I want that. I want something to drink. I want something to eat, or something like that. And immediately the doctors, the relatives who are sitting by the bed of the person who's diseased, immediately they get great joy in their heart, even though the person is not completely better. He's not completely healed. His fever has just broken a little bit. His coma has just, he's just come out of the coma. Still, everybody is so overwhelmed with joy when a fever breaks, when a coma is over like that. Everybody is so similarly. The Supreme Lord has this incredible happiness when he sees us come to our senses and break the delirium of this material world, of all these other insignificant and wrong aims that we had, right? And come to our senses and realize our eternal nature is to serve him. So it's important for us to give him an indication like that. He knows our mind and everything like that, right? But it's so nice for us to request. He really appreciates that. So let's look at let's go back to the main text, unless anybody's got some questions about the main meaning of the second half of the Dwaya mantra. Well, we can go on and we can start talking about the different words involved. We've already talked about Srimati, but we're going to talk about it again in this context. So, okay, so we'll just continue on. So after this, the intention of giving the word-by-word meaning of the sentence, meaning the last part of the Dwaya mantra, the second sentence, the second part of it. He takes up first the word Srimati. Remember, we discussed Srimati. First of all, what did we do? We discussed it in the first part of the Dwaya mantra. We discussed Shri, right? And we understood what Shri meant. And there were two meanings for Shri. Remember, Shriyate and Shrayate. And then we understood what mat meant, what Shriman or Shrimat, because remember we have in the beginning it's Shriman Narayana Charano, and in the second part of the Dwaya mantra it's Srimate Narayana Maha. So why Shriman and why Shrimat? Like that, there's a difference in the grammar, etc. But we should understand. Okay, so Srimate, according to text 165, Sutra 165. Srimate, we already know it refers to the goddess, but we're going to hear it again, right? To one who is united with the goddess. To one who is united with the goddess. That's what it means. And again, the goddess is given her name. In Tamil, Periya, great, right? Just like we say, Lord Ranganatha is Periya Perumal. Perumal means Vishnu. Periya means the big Vishnu, the great Vishnu. So Periya also means great, the great Lakshmi. So here we have the great Periya, Puratiya. Puratiya means Lakshmi, or the supreme consort of the Supreme Lord. Right. Thus, he gives its meaning as, quote, to the one who is united with the goddess. To the one who is united with the goddess. Now remember, if we look back, if we remember right back in the beginning of the Tirumantrum Prakaranam, when we started to understand the Tirumantra, the Om Namo Narayana mantra, the first part of that was Om. And the second letter in Om was U. And U was giving us not only exclusivity, but also it represented the Mahalakshmi. Right? It represented Mahalakshmi. Then later on, we understood that even the letter A in Om, which means the Supreme Lord, Sriman Narayana, right? Also includes, necessarily, the letter A also includes Mahalakshmi. So always the Lord is united with Mahalakshmi. All Sri Vaishnavas will accept this. And remember, we discussed also how there are slightly different concepts of how the goddess, how Mahalakshmi is always united with the Lord. And the Northern school also believes in Swarupa Vyapti, and the Southern school has a doctrine of Guna Vyapti. So that she is united in the Northern schools, on the Vadagalai's ideas, she is in her essence, her prime essence, her actual Swarupa, she is always in every place, always united with the, and every place and every time she's always united with the Lord. According to the Southern school, she is united with the Lord by Guna Vyapti, or her attributive knowledge, Dharma Bhuti Jnana. She is connected with the Lord always through her attributes, through her Guna Vyapti. Guna Vyapti, remember the word Vyapti means pervasiveness. So there are two ways to pervade things. You can either pervade things, only the Lord, the Tengalaya Acharyas will say, only the Lord is able to pervade everything, all matter and all the universe and everything, personally in his form. Other living beings, other Chaitanas who are liberated, the Muktas and the Nityas, the Nityasuris, they have expanded consciousness, They have unlimited knowledge and unlimited bliss, and therefore, through their knowledge, they are able to understand, they're able to pervade the whole of creation through their knowledge, like that, because their knowledge is all expansive, right? Because there's no blockage of their knowledge of Maya or illusion or their ignorance. Okay, so thus he gives the meaning as to the one who is united with the goddess. So it means if the second part of the Dwaya mantra is about service, it means that it is about service of God, service of Narayana, who is connected with Shri. So naturally, she's also being served. And we discussed this also in the Tirumantrum Prakaranam, that when a servant is brought to the house, just to remind us of what the Tirumantrum Prakaranam was about, the first part of the book, is that when servants are hired by the master of the house, the servant also will serve the lady of the house, the mistress of the house, right? The wife or the consort of the master of the house, the husband, right? Like that, in a traditional sort of family situation, right? Of course, nowadays, maybe the wife hires somebody and they also serve the husband, but the analogy is there that the Supreme Lord is the Supreme, and we worship the Supreme Lord only, but it doesn't mean that we don't worship Mahalakshmi, that we don't also or serve Mahalakshmi. Similarly, we serve other Vaishnavas. In fact, the true Vaishnava, he sees all living beings as being worthy of serving. He wants to serve all living beings. He wants the welfare of all living beings. The true welfare of all living beings is to explain these things to them, to get them to wake up and to come out of their delirium, to break their fever, to come out of the coma of material life, and to request the Lord for that service. So that is a duty of all Vaishnavas to help others. So thus, so here too, it is stated in the first sentence, right? So in the first sentence, we have Sriman Narayana. In the second sentence, we have Srimati Narayanaya. Okay? So in both cases, Sriman and Srimati are used. And they're used to mean, in the first sense, right, that the Lord is always united with Shri. Right, simple. So here, too, as stated in the first sentence, the two ways of conjugating the verb Shri, again, Shriyate and Shrayate, right? And their respective meanings are understood, along with the eternal union of the Lord and Shri indicated by the suffix mat or man, right? So mat or man means possessor of. So the word, for instance, the word Bhagavan, Bhaga means all auspicious qualities. So the person who is the possessor of all auspicious qualities is not just Bhaga, but he's Bhagavan, right? So the person who is always united with Shri, or the possessor or the controller or the master of Shri, is Shriman or Shrimat or Shrimate, right? So when this mat or man ending means the possessor of is attached to anything, it means the possessor of that thing. So the possessor or the controller or the master of Shri is Narayana. Okay. So indicated by the suffix mat are all to be considered here. Good. So even though their eternal union applies in both cases meaning in the first Sriman Narayana, in the first sentence of Dwaya Mantra, and in the Srimate Narayanaya, in the second sentence, right? He reveals her particular state in each situation. What does that mean? So remember when we were talking about Om Namo Narayanaya? Remember when we were talking about how Mahalakshmi is the mediator? And remember also how we were talking about the first part of the Dwaya Mantra, how she's also the mediator in there. And that if we look back at the meaning of the first sentence of the Dwaya Mantra, right? Shriman Narayana Charanasharam Pavadi. There she is understood to be the mediator. So we're going to talk about that again in a minute. First of all, let's look at what P.B. Nangacharya says about text 165. So text 165, according to P.B. Nangacharya, is also clubbed together with 166. So before we go back to 166 in the main text, let's do these two here. Again, so the meaning of text 165 is simply Srimati, right? Meaning the same as the same meanings that we had in the beginning of the first part of the Vaya mantra. And 166 says, to him who is together with Shri, right? The meanings of the word Srimati are now explained. So when it says simply Srimati, what it means is you should now remember the meanings that we gave for the word Shriman in our discussion of the first part of the Vaya mantra. We should remember the meaning of Shriyate and Shrayate. So then it says in 166, it means that he is together with Mahalakshmi, always together with her. The two derivations used in explaining the meaning of Shri in the first part of the mantra, see Sutras 124 and 125, their meanings and the eternal togetherness shown by the ending mat or mud here, or man, right, are to be considered here. So we have to again remember what we studied in Sutras 124 and 125. Therefore, Srimate means that he is together, he's always together with Periya Purity. Periya Purity or Periya Puritiya is Mahalakshmi. Okay. So going back to the main text, right? We have text 166. When he is the means or Rupaya, she is a mediator, Purushakara. He is the means. He's the means to moksha, to his service, right? She is the mediator, the Purushakara, or in the female version of a mediator is a mediatrix. We don't use that word much, but maybe in Old English. Okay, so mediator. She's the mediator, Purushakara. When he, what does Purushakara mean? Anyway, Purushakara means mediator. Okay. When he is the goal, Prapya, she is the one who promotes service, who promotes the service, Painkarya. Right? When the Lord becomes the means for destroying that which is unwanted by the Chaitanas and granting what they desire, he cannot tolerate association with any other upaya or any other means as an aid, right? So he himself is the means. And he's saying here that he doesn't tolerate any other means, right? So he says here, Sahayantara, Sam Sargatai Sahiyamai. So she, without participating in the upaya, right? And this is a difference between the northern school and the southern school again. The northern Vadagalai Sri Vaishnavas following Vedanta Deshika will consider Lakshmi as part of the upaya. She is also the means. So they will say, Lakshmi can give liberation herself. She is also the means to liberation, like that. Whereas the southern school says, no, only Narayana is the liberator. He is the means himself. She is not the means. She is the mediator. She is the mediator. She is the catalyst. She is the one who makes sure that the means get used, right? That the Lord actually does the salvation, and through surrendering to her, right, going through the Lord through her as a mediator, we make our surrender 100% successful, which we've discussed before. So she, without participating in the upaya, right, becomes the mediator, making it so that when the Lord is angered upon seeing the offenses of the sinful living beings, the sinful souls, the sinful chaitanas, he will forgive their sins and accept them. when the Lord becomes the goal, by receiving the Chaitanya's, the living being's service, she also becomes the goal as the recipient of service like the Lord. Right. So although she is, according to the Tengalai Sri Vaishnavas, the Southern School, she is not part of the means, in the sense that, okay, we go to her, and so she may appear to be a means, right? But she's not really a means. She's really a mediator. Her position is there to soften the heart of the Lord, to get him to accept us, even though we're extremely sinful. We've committed every type of sin over unlimited lifetimes, right? So she is simply there to mediate on our behalf. She also not only mediates to the Lord on our behalf, but she also helps us to approach the Lord, right? So she is in the middle. When the Lord becomes the goal by receiving the Chaitanya service, she also becomes the goal as the recipient of the service like the Lord. So when she becomes the goal, so we don't consider, Tengalai Sri Vaishnavas, we don't consider the Southern School, we don't consider her to be the means, we consider her to be the Purushakara, the mediator. She's not the Upaya, she's the Purushakara. But however, she is the Upaya, she is the goal. She is part of the goal. The full goal is the Supreme Lord with Mahalakshmi. So once the means have been achieved, right? Once the means are being used, the process of actual service is to the Lord and to Mahalakshmi together, not just to the Lord. So she also becomes the goal as a recipient of service like the Lord in Sri Vaikuntha. She increases the Lord's delight by multiplying tenfold, we can say unlimited fold, right, in his mind, the service that they do. She increases the Lord's delight, right? The Lord will be served by us in liberation eternally, and he will be delighted at that service. He will accept that service and he will be happy about that service. But because she's also being served, he will be even more delighted, right, by the service that we offer, right? So if we serve the Lord, if we only serve the Lord, then he'll be delighted. But if we serve the Lord along with Mahalakshmi, he'll be even more delighted, unlimitedly more, right? If we serve the Lord along with Mahalakshmi, right? In this way, she is the one who promotes the service, their service. She is the one who promotes their service. So Pilalokacharya has revealed the same thing more elaborately in another book of his called Parantapati. So when we were discussing in the introduction to Artha Panchakam, we saw that Pilalokacharya wrote 18 works. One of them is called Parantapati. So here we have an excerpt from Parantapati, which is another book. The word Srimati in the first sentence states how she sees the offenses of the Chaitanyas and the autonomy of the Lord. She says, I must approach him and make him save them, so they won't be destroyed as targets of his anger. Right? This is what she's thinking. She says, I must approach him, the Supreme Lord, and make him save them, so that they, the living beings, right, the Chaitanyas, the sinful living beings, right, won't be destroyed as targets of his anger. Thus, in order to join the sinful Chaitanyas, the sinful living beings with the Lord, to have them rejoin the company of the Lord and to serve him, she says she stays forever with him and never leaves. Right? He's giving here a reason. Why is Lakshmi always with the Lord? She's always there because she's promoting the service of the Lord. She wants to get it done. She wants to get this deal done between the living beings and the Lord. She wants the living beings to surrender to the Lord and to be accepted by the Lord. So because she wants to accept, she never leaves him, because she always wants to be there in case any living being comes and surrenders to the Lord, to promote that living being to the Lord, to mediate on behalf of that sinful living being to the Lord. She wants to make sure that she's always there to make that property successful. That surrender successful. Here, in the second sentence of the Dwaya mantra, the word Srimat refers to her state as a recipient. Her state as a recipient of the service of the muktas and the nityas, of the persons who attain liberation, of the chaitanyas, the living beings who have surrendered to the Lord. In the second, the meaning of Srimat in the second sentence, because the second sentence is about the goal, right? Remember, the second part of Dwaya, the first part is about the means, about surrender. The second part is about the goal, service to the Lord. So she's also part of service to the Lord. So that's why she's there in the second sentence. That's the main reason. So it shows how she remains forever united with him, not leaving even for an instant, for two reasons. Okay, one, in order to magnify tenfold or unlimited fold in the Lord's mind the service that the Chaitanyas do, right? Right? And the second reason, because of her unbroken attachment to the Lord, Nirantara Samshlesha, for she would cease to exist if there was an interruption in her experience of the Lord. She's so devoted to the Lord. Her unbroken attachment to the Lord. So these are the two reasons. So this is a quote from Parantapati, pages 168 to 169. He reveals that this second sentence in Dwaya is an explanation of the last word in the Tirumantram. The last word in the Tirumantram is actually Narayanaya. Narayanaya. Right? Okay, and specifically the term Aya, which means the service, like that. So let's see, let's go back to Pivyanangacharya and see. I believe here we might have divergence in numbering system in the way he numbers it. So let's go and see. What was understood by as 166 in the other version is understood as 167 here, I believe. So the meaning again is, when he is the upaya, that is, the one giving moksha, she will not be concerned with being the means. She's not the means, right? And will be focused on being the mediator. When he becomes the upaya, or the goal, and accepts service, she too will become the one who accepts service, right? Another one who accepts service, right? As well as one who increases the service provided by the Chaitanya manifold. Okay, so in both cases, before liberation and after liberation, she acts as a mediator and a catalyst. A catalyst makes a reaction happen more quickly or more intensely in chemistry. A catalytic agent. So she's a catalyst. She's a catalyst for the means, being the mediator. She makes it happen certainly, and she makes it actually happen, right? And then afterwards, in the service that we do to the Supreme Lord in Sri Vaikuntha, she's a catalyst. She makes the service accepted by him more pleasurable for him because of her presence, because of her being served at the same time as him. He enjoys that more. So again, the idea of us having a servant in the house. If a servant just simply serves the master of the house and doesn't do anything for the rest of the family or for the lady of the house, like that, Sure, we'll be pleased a little bit. The person who's the master of the house may be pleased a little bit. But if that servant is hired and to serve the master, but also serves the lady of the house, serves the children, serves everybody in the house like that, so much more will be the pleasure of the master. So in both parts of the mantra, Shri is expressed as being eternally with him. But, right, so in both parts, that's why in the beginning, when we start to understand the second part of the Dvaya mantra, we refer back to our understanding of Shriman and Shri and Shrimat, or Shriman, in the first part, right? But her state should be considered according to the conditions surrounding each, right? So what is the meaning of the two sections of the Dvaya mantra? The first meaning is the upaya, is the means. The first part of the Dvaya mantra has to do with surrender. It has to do with the means for liberation, the means for eternal service. The second part has to do with the eternal service itself, the goal, the upaya, right? So in both cases, the word means the same thing, but we have to understand the meaning of the word in the context of those two sentences. In the first context, it has to do with something to do with the upaya. It has to do with the means. She's not the means, but she's the mediator. She's the catalyst to the means. In the second case, in the context of the second part of the Dvaya mantra, which is the goal or service, she is the goal. She is also the goal. She's also the upaya. And she's also the catalyst there for making the service more pleasurable to the Lord. Infinitely more pleasurable by her being there and being served by the Chaitanyas also. So that's the point. So when he takes the role of upaya and removes that which is not wanted and gives that which is desired to the living being, she takes the role of mediator. When he takes the role of upaya, or the goal, and receives service from the living being, she too becomes the goal and will receive that service, right? Also, she will increase the service rendered, or increase the joy coming from the service rendered by the Chaitanya manifold, unlimitedly, right? And will make his divine heart pleased. Therefore, the eternal togetherness spoken of in the first part of the mantra, right? Sriman Narayana Tarano. That eternal togetherness is directed to the mediatrix role, or the role of mediator, right? And the same eternal togetherness expressed in the context of the second part of the mantra speaks of her receiving service and boosting the Chaitanya's service, boosting their service to please his divine heart. Okay, so nice. So let's continue on with the main text. Going back. In the main text, we are now back to, we are now going on to 167. When we go back to the other text, it'll be 168. So we've got, because the difference in the numbering has to do with 164 and 165, which are considered 165, which was considered two different sutras by Pidyanangacharya, but here they considered one. Okay, so continuing on with text 167 here, right? Here the goal stated in the Tirumantra is recalled in detail, right? So we have to remember what is the goal in the Tirumantra. Remember, what part of the Tirumantra expresses the goal? The last word, Narayanaya. Narayanaya is the word in the Tirumantra which expresses the goal, or the divine service of the Lord and Mahalakshmi in Vaikuntha, the eternal service of them. This sentence states literally that the recipient of service is the divine couple. Right? So although it just says Narayanaya, it includes Mahalakshmi in that. Right? Just as we said also that the letter A also in Omkara You also can include Mahalakshmi in that sense. So this refers clearly to the goal, which was suggested by the word Narayanaya in the Tirumantra, since it is only implied that that the recipient of the service is the divine couple. There, it is not explicitly stated that the one who accepts service needs to be united with Sri, right? So when we look in Om Namo Narayana, we don't say Om Namo Shriman Narayana or Om Namo Srimati Narayana. We don't see Sri there explicitly shown, right? Right? So it's not stated explicitly, right? There it is not explicitly stated that one who accepts service needs to be united with Sri, right? So anybody, normal people, when they come across the mantra Om Namo Narayana, it's a Narayana mantra. They don't necessarily think it has anything to do with Sri or Mahalakshmi. No, it's used for Narayana. If you ask a person, what's a translation? What's a simple translation of Om Namo Narayana? Or, oh my Lord, obeisances to Narayana. That's what it means. Or for Narayana. 2 or 4, dative case. So where is Sri there? People don't know this, but this is why we learn the secrets. She is included in that. So although it's not explicitly stated that one who accepts service needs to be united with Sri, or that one who does service needs to be selfless, it only went so far to say, I want to be one who has attained the goal of doing service to Narayana alone. That's basically what it meant, Narayana. Right? Therefore, since both of these meanings are stated here, the sentence is an explanation of the word Narayana. Let's see what, so then it says, what is the necessity of saying that one needs to do service to the couple? Okay, so let's deal with that next. So first of all, let's see what P.D. Namacharya says about that. That will come as 168 for him. So again, what was 167 in the other volume is 168 here. The sentence described in the Tirumantra, the service described in the Tirumantra by the word Narayana is explained clearly. That is, Mahalakshmi is the joint recipient of the living being's service in liberation. In the latter part of the Dwaya Mantra. In the latter part of the Dwaya Mantra, it's very clear. It's the same meaning as the last word, Narayanaya, of the Tirumantra. In the Tirumantra, it is said Narayanaya, meaning that the living being asked to perform service at the lotus feet of Narayana. That's the external meaning, or that's the external meaning. There it neither says openly that Narayana is one with whom Sri Mahalakshmi is present eternally, nor does it say that the Chaitana's sin is, the Chaitana's jinn is nothing but the service. I think that means, I think that's maybe a spelling mistake there. The Chaitanya has to do nothing but service to Srimad Narayana only. Right. Those are distinctly said here, and therefore it can be taken that the latter part of the Dwaya Mantra details the latter part of the Tira Mantra. Right. Exactly. So it's simply an elaboration. The latter part of the Dwaya Mantra is an elaboration of the word Narayanaya in the Tira Mantra. And that's why we say the Dwaya Mantra is an elaboration of the Tira Mantra. And what is not seen in Om, or not seen in Narayanaya, is seen in the second part of the Dwaya Mantra. That is, Srimati Narayanaya Namaha. So Srimati is exactly shown there. It's externally shown. It's intrinsically, it's not only intrinsically, it's externally shown there. It's quite clearly shown in the second part of the Dwaya Mantra, whereas in Omkara and in Narayanaya, it's understood by those people who know the secret meaning of those, of the esoteric meanings, but it's very obvious in the Dwaya mantra. You can't get the Dwaya mantra wrong, right? Because it's an expounding, it's an explanation, it's an elaboration of the Tirumantrum. Okay, so let's go back to the main text. It'll be text 169, I believe. Uh, 168, which will be 169 for Vidyamachara. So, like Lakshmana, this is the okay. So, what is the question here? What is the question? What is the necessity of saying that one needs to do service to the couple, right? So, so we've understood, right, that Narayana means service unto Lord Narayana. But why? Is there actually a necessity to say that we should serve the couple? We should serve Mahalakshmi and Lord Narayana, and that is actually the goal. Is there a need to say that? So the answer to that is given in Sutra 168, that like Lakshmana being the younger brother of Rama, who was in the forest with Rama and Sita, and he is called in Tamil Ilaya Perumal. Ilaya Perumal. So like Lakshmana, it is proper to do service to the two united as a couple. So here's an example of someone who performed service to the couple. Lakshmana performed service to Rama and Sita together in the forest. Lakshmana performed service to the Lord and the goddess united, saying, "O Lord, as you roam over mountains and valleys with Vaidehi," Vaidehi is the name of Sita, "I will do all kinds of service for you," meaning both of you, right? Whether you are awake or asleep. And this is a quotation from Valmiki Ramayana, 2:28:10. So in the same way, doing service to the couple united is appropriate for the soul's true nature, since the soul's essential nature, or swarupa, is subservience to both of them. Service to the couple is inherently proper. Swarupa prapta. Swarupa prapta. He furthermore reveals the distinctive quality, vachi, which is present when the service is done to the two together. So let's see what Vidyamachara has to say in the other version. So again, what was 168 in the last one is 169 here. The true nature of the Chaitanya or living being is to do service to the divine couple, just as Lakshmana did service to both Rama and Sita. So why should the living being do service to both Narayana and Mahalakshmi? Because Lakshmana sought to do service of both Rama and Sita and did just that. And the goal of the nature of the soul is to do service to the divine couple, since being enslaved to the couple is the nature of the soul, or his swarupa. Doing service to that couple is the nature of the goal. It's the goal of that nature and it's the nature of that goal. Right. So back to the main text. Text 169. Only in their union will service be obtained and bring joy. She is the one who causes the autonomous Lord graciously to accept the Chaitanya's service rather than ignore it. So she's the cause, in a sense. She's the catalyst. She's the one that makes the deal between the living beings and the Lord happen. For this reason, it was when she was present that Lakshmana requested and attained service in accord with his true nature in the passages he said to Sita and Rama, or facing Sita, he addressed this to Rama. So these are all different quotations from the Ramayana. But in each case, when Lakshmana is requesting service, he's doing it in the through Lord Rama in the company of Sita, together with Sita. So the footnote here says, Lakshmana clasped his brother's feet firmly and said to Sita and to the great vowed Rama, variant reading of the Ramayana 2:28:1. Thus instructed by Rama, Lakshmana folded his hands and facing Sita, he addressed this to Rama. And that's from Ramayana 3:14:6-7. These passages are cited to show that Lakshmana made his successful request for service only in the presence of Sita. Only in the presence of Sita. So that's why these are being quoted by Manavala. In the same way, it is only when the Lord and Sri are united that the service of the living being, that the service the living being requests will be realized. Right. So again, this is why on the night of Panguni Uttaram, everybody wants to go to Ranganayaki's temple, Ranganayaki's Sannidhi in Sri Rangam temple, the Lord's consort, when the Lord visits her one day a year, and they sit together one day a year, and everybody wants to request service at that time. So everybody goes and they recite the Gadyas of Ramanuja, starting with Sharanagati Gadya, the prayer of surrender, and the prayer of surrender itself starts with the resorting to Sri Devi, resorting to Mahalakshmi. The prayer of surrender to Lakshmi comes first. But the most important time to surrender is that time of the year. So that is the day of surrender in Sri Rangam. Of course, every day people chant Sharanagati Gadya, and they always think of these things, and they chant Vaya mantra all the time. But and of course that we should not think that we're going to show up and we're going to do every year we're going to do Prapati. We're not doing Prapati every year. We're simply remembering the once only time that we did Prapati, right? But still, it is the time when Sri Vaishnavas like to go in front of the Lord when he is united with Mahalakshmi, right? In the same way, it is only when the Lord and Sri are united that the service the living being requests will be realized. Furthermore, just as a son will enjoy attending his parents only when both the mother and father are together, it is only when the Lord and Sri are united that service will be pleasurable. Okay, so this is the end of the understanding of the first word of the second sentence of the Dvaya mantra, which again is Srimate Narayanaya Namaha, the first word being Srimate. So we understood, again, this would be longer if we had to explain Shri and Mat, but we already explained them when we discussed the first sentence of the Dvaya mantra. So that those explanations are already there as well. But on top of that, we have to understand the word Shri in context in both sentences. The context is different here. The context in the first sentence is the context of the means of surrender to the Lord. And the context of the second is in the context of the goal or service to the Lord in Vaikuntha. Okay, and to Mahalakshmi. So let's see what P.B. Anangacharya says. This part of this. So, again, the meaning of the sutra, the service that the living being seeks to perform becomes complete and is enjoyed only when done towards the divine pair or the divine couple. Also, it is Mahalakshmi who makes him, who is dependent on none, who is completely independent, accept service. So the Lord is completely independent, right? He doesn't need any service. He doesn't need our service. He doesn't even need Mahalakshmi's service, right? But she makes him need the service. She makes him accept the service. It is therefore through Sita that Lakshmana seek to do service to Rama and gained it. Right? Lord Rama doesn't need Lakshmana to serve him. Lord Rama is the Supreme Lord. He's completely and totally independent, self-sufficient. But through Sita, right, through Sita being present, Rama accepted the service of Lakshmana. Sometimes, like a brother or anybody, somebody may be too proud or too lofty to accept the service of another person. But when the wife is there, right, somehow or other they accept it. They accept the service because the service is being offered to both of them, so therefore they accept it. So it is therefore through Sita that Lakshmana seek to do service to Rama and gained it. Otherwise, he might go to Rama and he might say, "Oh, I want to serve you, Rama," and Rama said, "No, I don't need your service. I'm self-sufficient. I'm fully satisfied. I'm happy. I can do it. I can do it myself." But in the presence of Sita, when Sita is there as a catalyst to help the Lord accept Lakshmana's service, then that service to both of them is gained. Therefore, the service that the Chaitanya or the living being prays to do is made complete and enjoyed only when performed to the divine couple. Okay. So again, now we've basically reached the end of the meaning of the word Srimati. The next word is Narayanaya. So were there any questions about the word Srimati, the meaning of Shri, the meaning of Mat, the meaning of Srimati in this particular context of the goal, or in the context of the Upaya, or in the context of liberation, in the context of the second part of the Dwaya Mantra? Or, yeah, go ahead.
No, not really any questions with respect to that. I was just thinking about when you described the Leela, of when the one day a year that Sriman Narayana goes and actually is with Lakshmi. And I was looking at that video that you posted, that ISKCON video, whereby, the Leela, how it leads up to that, and how the Lakshmi is actually, annoyed at him and locks him out, and he has to go through 3 times, he has to make an attempt 3 times, etc. And I was just thinking that after having that big fight in that Leela, they have a quarrel and they have a fight, the way it's described. And then, he has to kind of like get her on his side again. No wonder he's extremely merciful. I was just meditating on that, when he's together with her also. Because if you think about it, if they had a big fight, and then he's also in the temple of Mahalakshmi herself, you would think that, whatever she says kind of like goes at that point. I was just thinking of the Leela, and I was just thinking that was really nice as you were describing that.
Yeah, that Leela is there also in Jagannath Puri. They call it Hera Panchami, and Lakshmi gets upset that Lord Jagannath goes on his Rath Yatra, and he goes and stays outside of the temple and doesn't come back for a while, like that. So in Sri Rangam, what happens is that the Lord goes across the river to another Lakshmi, another temple of the goddess in Warrior, which is a suburb of Trichinopalli, and there's a temple there called Nachya Koil. So Koil means temple in Tamil. Nachya means goddess, so it's a goddess temple. So there is, of course, a deity of the Supreme Lord there too, Sriman Narayana, but they don't call it that. They call it the goddess temple because Lord Ranganath comes there to visit that particular goddess, that particular form of Lakshmi, and then he comes back. And when he comes back, he tries to go and enter he tries to enter the shrine of Mahalakshmi, which is in the north of the Ranganath Swami temple. It's a very big shrine. He is forbidden to enter, and in fact the priests there throw all sorts of things like yogurt and different things. They throw trash on him, and there's a whole fight that goes on, and there's a discussion which goes over the microphones, the speakers, which is done by the priests, which there's a whole argument between her and him about where was he, what was he doing, and all this sort of stuff, and basically I don't know if anybody's translated, but she says, well, where were you? And he says, well, no, I was, I was saving my devotees. This is what I do. I go to the world and I save my devotees. I patronize out in Amvinasha to become Dhamma some stuff. I had to go and do that. So that's why I was doing that. And she says, but, you have these scratches on your body. You've been with another woman. And he goes, no, that's not like it. Said my devotees, they all hang out in the forest. They're all sages and they hang out in the forest. So when you go to the forest, sometimes you get scratched by the trees and the thorns and things like that. So he says that. So then she says, no, I don't believe that. Anyway, it's the whole thing that goes back and forth. And he makes so many excuses and so many things like that to try and visit her. And then she says, she won't agree. And then the deity, the processional deity of Namalwar comes. And Namalwar comes there and he acts like her father. And he pacifies her. And he says, no, look, you have to make up with, he's your husband. You have to accept him. You have to let him in, and you have to calm down, etc. And she won't. And then finally Namalwar says, look, there are all these Vaishnavas and devotees. There are all these devotees who are out there like that. They're guests. They've arrived at your door and they're waiting to have entrance. And she says, oh, the guests have come. And so then she says, no, I can't be unhospitable. I have to show hospitality to guests. If a guest comes to my door, right? If we know anybody who's ever read Kathopanishad, in Kathopanishad, Nachiketas, one boy is sent to hell and he's sitting on the front doorstep of Yamaraj for 2 or 3 days fasting because Yamaraj wasn't there to receive him. And then when Yamaraj comes, he's like afraid that he's committed some great offense by not offering hospitality and feeding this boy that came to his door. So when somebody comes to your door, this is the whole idea in Vaishvadeva also, that the Grihastha has to ask before he takes his own food. He has to not only satisfy all the devas and different living beings and rishis and all things like that with the Panchamahayagnis, the Vaishvadeva, but he has to also invite a guest to come and to take food in his house. And that can be a guest which is what is called atiti, a person who is not somebody who is necessarily a relative or a friend who made an appointment to come and take meals at your house, but just a random person, right? Somebody in need. This also gets back to the idea of serving all living beings, right? Of looking to the welfare of all sentient beings, which is what we should do. And so this is part of it. So Mahalakshmi also thought like this. She thought, oh, there's guests there at the door. I must let them in. I must, I have to give hospitality to the guests. Hospitality to the guest is the whole basis of worship, right? If we look at the upacharas and the pujas that we offer, right? It's all of the nature of going through the motions of welcoming a guest to your house or worship of the king in the palace, right? How we receive, it's a reception. That's what puja is. I offer water for washing your feet. Why would I water washing your feet? Because you just came on a journey and you just came to my doorstep and your feet are dirty. So washing your hands, wash your mouth. I offer you a drink because you're thirsty because you just came from this journey. It's all about reception of guests. So that is the basis of all puja. That's the basis of all worship, of all ritualistic worship, is the reception of guests. So that is the base of Mahalakshmi thought. I cannot let, even if my husband or the Supreme, even if he be the Supreme Lord or whatever it is like that, my consort, even if I perceive that he's done something wrong and I don't want to let him in, I at least have to let in these other people. They haven't done anything wrong. They're innocent guests. So let them in. So she says, okay, I cannot make the sin of allowing the guests to sit there without being accepted, without having hospitality. So open up the doors. So they open up the doors and all the guests come in and he sneaks in with the guests. Actually, she's still mad at him. She's still upset with him. She's still angry with him, right? But somehow he gets in. Somehow he gets in, and once he's in, they sit together, and then people surrender. It's a beautiful, beautiful ceremony. You know, it has a lot of meaning. It has an external meaning to help us, you know, to understand our own relationships with others and how we should deal with others, and be very compassionate towards other living beings. And it has also this further deeper meaning of how surrender comes about. Surrender comes about. Before surrender happens, there might be all sorts of turbulence, you know, like that. Just like I was saying before, I gave the example of somebody who's in a coma or somebody who's delirious with a fever, like that. So that's all that fighting and all that sort of stuff like that happens before that, you know, that may be, you know, all of that, the last gasps of material life, when the living being becomes frustrated and completely disgusted with material life and realizes his hopelessness, right? So we don't know, you know, like there's a point there in that ceremony where you think, he's never going to get in there. We're never going to get in there. We're never going to have the darshan of Mahalakshmi. We're never going to see the Lord and Mahalakshmi sitting together. And therefore, we're never going to have a successful property. We're never going to be able to surrender to them together. All these people are thinking like that at that ceremony. So there's this frustration, which leads to hopelessness and helplessness, which is part of surrender, which makes the surrender even sweeter, right? If a person's really drowning, you know, a lifeguard can save somebody who's just in a little bit of trouble. But when he saves somebody who is really, really drowning, when I save a person, when I saved a kid one time when the kid was blue. The kid was blue. The kid had turned blue. He was not breathing. Okay, he was dead, basically. So, and brought him back. The satisfaction for doing that is much greater. The intensity of the feeling of surrender, when that surrender seems like it's completely out of your control and completely out of reach, that goal. Once attained, the satisfaction of that on the part of all parties concerned is so much greater, so much more intense. So that is the reason this festival like this. That's one reason. There's many reasons. There's many things to be said about this festival, but it's an intensity that is trying to be conveyed to the people. It is the very first stage of the liturgical year calendar. The liturgical calendar year of the temple of Sri Rangam is the act of surrender. This Panguni Uttaram. And the last in the year, and this goes on every year. It's the very first liturgical, ceremony. And the very last one is the end of the Vaikuntha Ekadasi, when Namaola is seen to bow down his head and touch the feet of the Lord and be covered with tulsi leaves and sambrani incense smoke like that, and disappear. And then in that ceremony, we understand that he has attained the feet of the Lord, and he has gone to Sri Vaikuntha, and he is now engaged in the eternal worship of the Lord and his service. So the beginning is surrender, and the end is the goal, which is being described here in the Dwaya Mantra. The first part is the means, which is surrender. Initially is surrender, but the primary means is the Lord himself. And secondly is the goal. And just like in the Dwaya Mantra, that Panguni Uttaram festival includes Mahalakshmi, has to include Mahalakshmi. That makes it successful. But the anticipation, the frustration of thinking we won't get into her shrine, we won't be able to see them together, that frustration is there by people who, before they take to spiritual life, before they surrender to the Lord, that frustration has to be there. And they feel hopelessness and helplessness. That is part of Sharanagati. So so through the festivals in Sri Rangam, the festivals are nice. We all enjoy the festivals, but they have deep, deep meaning. And so, therefore, we should understand the deep meaning, and we should understand the parallel of these festivals in the Dwaya Mantra. We're studying the Dwaya Mantra now. So the first part is a parallel to that Panguni Uttaram. The second part is a parallel to the Vaikuntha Ekadasi festival. The attainment, the goal, attaining Vaikuntha. In the Vaikuntha Ekadasi festival, in the morning of Vaikuntha Ekadasi, the Lord Namperamo gets on his procession and he comes out of his sanctum sanctorum and he goes out into the next prakaranam, like that, within the temple, and he's accompanied by the lucky people who are, there are some lucky people who get in there and they actually can accompany the Lord. I've done it a few times, but you have to line up for hours and days, or you have to have a special pass. But you're in there like that, following the palanquin, and he comes to a specific mandapa before he comes to the Vaikuntha gate, the gate of Vaikuntha, which is called the Paramapada Vasal. Right? That gate is only open on that day so that you can go to Vaikuntha. All right. And the Lord is going to Vaikuntha, and the souls are following the Lord along to Vaikuntha. And he comes to this particular mandapa, and it's called the Viraja Mandapa. It's called Viraja Mandapa, and it's got black basalt columns, 4 black basalt columns, and he stays there and he performs a ceremony there. The Lord does the rituals. The Lord performs the apara prayogas. He performs the tarpanas and the shraddhas for his devotees, for the devotees that are following him to Vaikuntha, following him to liberation, are being taken by him to Vaikuntha. And this is the Viraja. So in the Achiradi Marga, the Viraja is the last step before reaching Vaikuntha. It's the demarcation, it's the river. It's considered like a river or like an ocean between us and Vaikuntha. It's the marking place, the boundary of the material world. At that place, we will bathe in that river, and all of the subtle body will be completely, we lose at death, of course, the physical body, the Bhuta Sharira, the Stula Sharira, the gross body is washed off, is left behind, and we are burned up in the cremation, and we attain an Atibahika body, which is a very subtle body, and we have we're still carried by our desires here and there, like that, which are very subtle in the subtle body, right? And once we reach the Viraja, all of those things are washed off, like cleansing ourselves in the river Ganges. And then in fact, it is the river Ganges. When Lord Vamana kicked the universe open, some drops of the Viraja came through, and that's the Ganges. So that is why the Ganges is so purifying. It is the Viraja river. Imagine that pristine river before it washed Vishnu's feet and came down on Shiva's head and came down to the earth, to the Himalayas. Okay, so the idea is take bath in the Viraja, and after reaching the other bank, we're going on one side, taking bath, and coming out the other side like a tank or a pond or a lake or an ocean or a river, or whatever, a body of water, and being purified. And when we come out on the other side, that's Sri Vaikuntha. So what happens in the Vaikuntha Ekadasi festival is, after performing the shraddhas and the tarpanas for the devotees who are following him, the Lord then on his palanquin comes to the Vaikuntha gate, and they open the Vaikuntha gate, right? And of course, in Sri Rangam, there'll be people on the other side as well, who I guess are supposed to be the Nityasuris welcoming you to Vaikuntha, right? In the description of attaining Vaikuntha, you're welcomed by 500 ladies and gents of Vaikuntha, and they give you garlands, and they congratulate you on arriving there, and they take you to see Lord Narayana. So then you exit out the gate, and with the Lord, and then the Lord goes there. He goes to the 1,000-pillared mandap in Sri Rangam, which is called the Tirumamani Mandapam. And he goes in there and he sits on his throne in the 1,000-pillared mandap. and you go there and you hear you see him, and you hear all of the devotees chanting the Nalaya Divya Prabandha. So the whole of the Vaikuntha Ekadasi festival is called Adhyayanotsava. It means the festival, Utsava, the Utsava of Adhyayana, of recitation. Of recitation of what? Not the Vedas, of recitation of the Tamil Divya Prabandhas. So it's a 21-day festival, including the 1 day of Vaikuntha Ekadasi. Half of it is done. There's Pagalpatu and Rapatu. There's the first part and the second part of it. And then Vaikuntha Ekadasi comes in the middle. The first part is all done inside the temple in a small mandapa called the Arjuna Mandapa. So every day the Lord comes out of his sanctum, Nam Perumal, and he sits in the Arjuna Mandapa, which is just next to the Sanctum Sanctorum. And the Aryas, those people who wear the fez-like hats with the Shankachakra Namam on, who are in the families of people who know all the 4,000 Tamil hymns by heart, they come and they sing with little kartals. They have these little manjiras, kartals. They make these sounds, and they do abhinaya. They sing the Nalaya Divya Prabandham of the Alwars from the beginning to the end, right? Starting from 10 days inside and 10 days in the 1,000-pillared Manda. So they start off in the Arjuna Mandapa, and they do abhinaya. They show the Nalaya Divya Prabandha verses with hand movements and dance gestures. And it's only done in two places, in Sri Rangam and in Sri Veliputur, the place of Andal. These are the only places where they still do that, right? They say, I think Tirumangai Alwar started this festival or whatever it is like that. So anyway, Ramanuja also, they encouraged this festival of Adhyayanotsava. So there, that is done. So when you're in the 1,000-pillared mandap, it's like the darshan that you have of the Lord in Sri Vaikuntham. So what does it say in the Veda? It says, Sada pasyanti surayaha. We see him always. We're going to, the suras, the devotees are going to see him always see him, right? So we go and we see him in the actually there's a really special time. If you want a special darshan, you come just when the Lord comes out of one of the temple gates. Before, he's still within the main temple, but he comes through one of the walls like that, and he's just about to go into the 1,000-pillared mandap. Just when he's about to go through the 1,000-pillared mandap, they put up a big pandal made of chetai, palm leaf pandal, and he goes around for a few minutes like that. And when he goes around on his palanquin at that point, if you go there at that time, it happens maybe 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning on Vaikuntha Ekadasi, and on the next 10 days, the last part of the festival, the Rapatu part of the festival. You go at that time, it's very close to my house, so you just nick in the side of the eastern gate of the temple, which is under the white Gopuram, and you're immediately there in that place, right? So you go there, and you can be within a foot. You can be a foot away from you can be so close to him because they're just carrying him there, and you could be very close to him like that. And then he goes into the 1,000-pillared mandap and he sits on there, and then they do the abhinayam also like that. So then at the end of 10 days of doing that inside, and then another 10 days doing it outside, the very last day is called Namalwa Mokshanam. They bring Namalwa, and without any alankaram, he's just wearing a dhoti. He's not wearing any upper cloth. And they bring his deity right before the deity of Nam Perumal in the 1,000-pillared mandap, which is the description in Acharadi Marga of how the soul goes to Vaikuntha and goes to the 1,000-pillared mandap and then sits on the lap, climbs up on Shesha and sits on the lap of Sriman Narayana and is introduced to him, to Sriman Narayana, like that. So Namalwar goes and he sits right in front facing Namalwar like that. And they have lots of smoke and lots of incense and everything like that. It's very, very mystical, and they're all chanting the last part of the Nalaya Divya Prabandham. And at one point, they they take Nam Alwar's deity and they tip him forward like this. So his head is on the feet of the Utsava deity of Ranganatha Namperam. And then they begin to do archana and throw, and they're still chanting, and there's so much incense, they begin to throw tulsi leaves until there's so much tulsi that Nam Alwar disappears. And so it's understood that he goes to moksha. And people are literally crying when they see this. It invokes such emotion amongst the devotees who know the inner meaning of these things. So these temple festivals have everything to do with the philosophy of Sri Vaishnavism, with the philosophy of devotion, the philosophy of surrender, the philosophy of kind karya, eternal service to the Lord, right? And Nam Alwar is the paradigmatical. He is the example, right, of the great devotee, of the greatest devotee of the Lord, who attains the Lord, who attains the service of the Lord in this festival, and he's an example to all of us. So this has to be seen. Devotees have to see this. But when we explain the meaning of the Dvaya mantra, this is what we're explaining. All of these things are so there may be people who are totally illiterate and they can't read these books, right? Maybe they're not even intelligent enough to sit down and sit through the discourses of an acharya to teach them these principles. But they can go to the temple and they can see the Archavatara form of the Lord. And Nam Perumal, our Lord, our God, shows them through his actions of going to Mahalakshmi Sannidhi on Panguni Uttaram and sitting with her, through his actions of going to the Viraja Mandapa on the Vaikuntha Padasi, of going through the Paramapada Vasal, the gate to Vaikuntha, and of his action of entering into the 1,000-pillared mandap and accepting Nam Alwar at his feet at the end of the festival. Through these actions, he shows us the esoteric and inner meaning of the Dvaya mantra. So if you want to learn something, if you want to know something, you show it, you think of ways to learn it in many different ways. So we're learning it by reading the book. We're learning it by hearing it from acharyas like Dr. Alwar and Tirunarayan, different people. We're hearing it from them, right? We're discussing it amongst ourselves. We see it, we write it, we hear it, we repeat it. This is how we imbibe the message of surrender. This is how we understand the philosophy of service, of moksha as being eternal service. This is how we understand these things. In so many different ways we can understand it. And they can be subtle ways or they can be very gross ways. They can be in the form of festivals, huge temple festivals, or they can be in the form of classes or discussions that we have. It's all to reinforce this idea within our minds, all to reinforce these things.